This is True Crime and Scene. Today, we delve into a chilling story that has haunted South America, the terrifying tale of Pedro Alonso López, infamously known as the Monster of the Andes. He confessed to murdering over 300 young girls across Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. But hold on, there's a shocking twist. Despite his chilling admissions, there was no physical evidence, no witnesses, and no bodies to substantiate his claims. How could someone be convicted of such horrific crimes without a shred of proof? Pedro's early life was marked by brutal trauma and neglect. Abandoned by his parents at a young age, he grew up in a chaotic life fraught with violence and abuse. By the time he reached his teens, something sinister began to fester deep within him. He didn't just harbor anger, he craved control and power, like an insatiable hunger for dominance. Fast forward to the 1970s, when a series of disappearances began to plague South America. Young girls vanished without a trace. Whispers spoke of a monster lurking in the shadows. Then, as if the universe conspired to expose the predator, Pedro was apprehended in 1980. Sitting in a dimly lit police station, he confessed to the unthinkable. He claimed to have lured more than 300 girls with promises of safety and companionship, only to lead them to their deaths. But as investigators probed deeper, questions arose. Where were the bodies? Why couldn't anyone corroborate his story? As the confession unfolded like an eerie tapestry, disturbing inconsistencies crept into the picture. One investigator leaned closer, brow furrowing as he examined Pedro's claims. "You say you've committed these crimes, but where's the evidence?" Pedro smirked, a chilling glint in his eyes. "I am the evidence. I hide them where no one dares to look." News of his confession spread like wildfire, igniting fear and disbelief in communities. Families held their breath, wondering if their missing loved ones were among the grim tally of Pedro's victims. And yet, despite the absence of physical proof, his words held an unsettling weight. Was he truly the monster he claimed to be? The investigation reached a fever pitch as authorities scrambled to unravel the web of his confession. They uncovered a chilling pattern. Young girls living in poverty, often runaways, were his primary targets. Was Pedro merely preying on the most vulnerable? But just as the case began to gain clarity, another twist sent shockwaves through the investigation. A series of anonymous letters arrived at the police station, filled with detailed accounts of other unsolved disappearances that hinted at someone else being involved. The letters were signed El Lobo, or the Wolf. More similar crimes, not just from Pedro's confession, began to unfold. Could there be more than one monster prowling the Andes? Investigators found themselves at a crossroads. How could they separate truth from twisted fantasy? With no bodies, no corroboration, and a growing sense of urgency, the message of El Lobo loomed over Pedro's confession. Bracing for another storm, local authorities began connecting dots, igniting a chilling question: was Pedro a part of a larger network, a mere pawn in a game played by unseen hands? As investigators dug deeper, one constant emerged: Pedro's to take pleasure in their confusion, hinting at knowledge only known to the darkest corners of the Andes. Could he really be the mastermind? Or was he simply a sick man looking for notoriety? No answers came as Pedro's trial approached. The public buzzed with speculation. Was he a monster or a manipulator? Asterisk, what lay hidden in the jungles and valleys of the Andes? Continued uncertainty hung in the air as courtroom battles ignited. Evidence was lacking, yet Pedro's chilling confessions held sway over the jury. Would they believe him without concrete proof? The judge's gavel would soon strike, and just when it seemed the gavel might deliver a semblance of justice, the eerie voice of El Lobo echoed in the shadows, revealing a plot twist that would send the case spiraling into chaos. As the trial continued, every twist deepened and the mystery surrounding Pedro Alonso López, the looming presence of El Lobo, echoed through the courtroom. haunting everyone involved, with investigators still scrambling to connect the dots. One undeniable truth emerged: Pedro's confessions were not the end. They were merely the beginning. The prosecution was desperate. They needed evidence to bolster their case. But with each passing day, it felt like they were chasing shadows. How could they convict a man who claimed to have 300 victims with no bodies, no corroborating witnesses, and now an anonymous adversary lurking in the background? Pedro sat in silence, eyes glinting with something sinister, feeding off the confusion he had sown. As reporters flooded the courtroom, desperate for stories, a new development erupted. The authorities received a strange tip-off. An unmarked package arrived at the station with coordinates scribbled on plain paper. They led to a remote jungle area outside the city, a dense thicket of vegetation that bore witness to many secrets. Fueled by desperate hope, the investigation team mobilized. As dawn broke over the Andes Mountains, teams of searchers trekked into the heart of the jungle, filled with dread and hope. Hours turned into a tense waiting game until, late in the morning, a discovery sent shockwaves through the team. Unmarked graves. Not one, but several, shallow and hastily covered. Each grave was a haunting reminder of lives once lived. And as searchers unearthed the remains, the horror began to manifest. The bones of young girls, victims of a tragedy long concealed, came into view. The haunting specter of Pedro's confession now seemed horrificously credible. Amidst the grim discovery, something else emerged. Each grave had a calling card, a small token placed near the remains. An intricate necklace, a small toy, or other belongings belonging to each victim. Who was responsible for putting them there? The sinister implications started to swirl around Pedro. If he was just a pawn in a much larger game, who had commissioned him? Then, as the media frenzy escalated within the courthouse, a chilling revelation rocked the proceedings. Forensic experts uncovered a link between Pedro and a network of individuals behind the disappearances. Mysterious, powerful figures believed to have orchestrated these horrific acts. El Lobo wasn't just a name, he was a figurehead atop a monstrous pyramid scheme of exploitation. "Everything is coming to light," whispered one investigator to his partner after piecing together the evidence. Pedro isn't acting alone. He's sitting on a throne of darkness. The haunting truth cast everything in a new light. What had begun as a gruesome tale of one man's depravity now hinted at an insidious plot orchestrated by numerous players, each as guilty as Pedro in their quest for power and control. Back in court, uncertainty grew as Pedro's fought each threat and to crack under mounting pressure. "You'll never find out the truth," he sneered, a fire dancing in his eyes. "You're too late to stop what you ignited." But the detectives were undeterred as they tied what they could together, rushing to unveil the network while the trial carried on. As witnesses began to testify, one told an unthinkable tale. They claimed to have witnessed Pedro interacting with wealthy individuals who facilitated these atrocities, Alva, while ensuring he remained the fall guy. The prosecution could hardly believe their ears. Here they were, caught in a labyrinth woven from power, exploitation, and deceit. That revelation fueled their pursuit for justice. They needed it to turn the tide against Pedro and discover the true masterminds behind the unspeakable horrors. As witnesses trickled in with disturbing testimonies about the connections, the courtroom hung in suspense. The arrest of powerful individuals lurking in the shadows became a palpable possibility. But time was running out. The lengths to which these figures would go to protect their empire remained unknown. In a shocking twist, another anonymous letter arrived just as the trial approached a critical point. The contents vibrated with foreboding urgency. "You have no idea what you're about to uncover. The monster is only a bait. The real predator hides in plain sight." With the stakes escalating and the clock ticking, Eileen's truth was on the verge of being exposed, threatening to unravel an entire network fueled by darkness. What would this mean for the case? Who was pulling the strings? And could real justice ever prevail? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to True Crime and Scene, now else we will be gone.